Sam and Asterion held the line with 3 shield-using Scribbler Knights beside them. They laid down a constant stream of fire into the main control room. Inside, 3 large fanged creatures were knitted together, and it charged. Asterion stepped forward and plunged a flamer nozzle into one of its mouths. He struggled, ramming it in while wrestling the mass of creatures. Sam came to his side and pulled the trigger, shooting flames deep into the cores of the beasts. The Gallic inside cooked. Sam waved for everyone to charge in. Knights secured the doors. An Infinigan tech mounted a broadcaster spider onto the main access display. The room lights flickered as Nova took full control of the elevator. "Nova, we good?" "Yes, sir. We have control of both the upper and lower elevator decks. I am coordinating lift evacuation now with the Kawaru." Farther out, one of the Gallic head aboard its massive Gree carrier was listening in on the invaders' chatter. 10 of its bodies waved their appendages at the steward at the edge of the room. "Destroy them! They have proven nuisance enough." The 3-creature-comprised Gallic tilted. Bodies or no bodies? The head turned its multiple bodies and stared at the steward. "Ash preferably." "Understood. Orders relayed." Sam was watching the monitor when the station shook. "Sir, multiple ships firing. The elevator ribbon has been lanced." The Infinigan zoomed the display over. Neon outlines surrounded the ripped band as it fell down toward Cathu. "Sam," the Infinigan said, "we're untethered. This is bad." Sam and the rest of the room looked at the tech. "How bad?" "We're spiraling. At the current angle, we will spin into the atmosphere and probably burn up." Sam stepped over to the monitor. He stared as he looked at the spinning station on the screen. "Well, gravity fields are still operational. We still have power. Can we fire thrusters and stabilize?" Nova spoke through the comm. "It is a resting station, sir. The thrusters on board are merely to keep it in position, not to combat chaotic freefall." Sam touched his forehead with his eyes shut. "Ideas?" "I have been hit on the port side, sir," Nova said. "Venting atmosphere, 13 casualties, numerous injured." Sam looked at the display. "You're still attached?" "Yes, sir. I am with you." Sam looked around the room. "Everyone run. Get to the Tsar. Abandon the station." Sam pointed down the hall. "Now! Kill anything not us you see, and move!" The room burst into movement as the soldiers began running back to their ship. A Gallic-controlled insectoid creature spotted them from a side hall and charged. 2 knights shot at it as they ran past. The Infinigan tech tossed a grenade and held everyone to the wall until it detonated. Bits flew past. The tech motioned everyone to continue. Sam, Asterion, and the soldiers made it back to the Tsar. "Nova, seal the door and get us back into orbit." "Door sealed, sir, but engine was just hit." The ship rocked again. "We were just hit again." "Options, Nova." "I will control our descent as best as possible, sir, aiming us toward the valley next to the remaining city." Sam looked around and hit his comm. "Everyone brace for a hard landing. We're going down." Moose led the battle toward the mining outpost, but was held in place by the continuous barrage from the artillery placements. Moose crawled over to 3 Infinigan who were sniping at the creatures manning the guns. "You able to bring them down?" The sniper closest to him was looking through his scope and fired a shot. "Yes and no. We keep wrecking them, but more take their place. I think they are using dummy bodies to run them. Their real selves are out of sight." The next sniper overspoke. "Confirmed on that. Look to the floor next to the outer door, by the overhang. There is a mass of rope there." She fired at the cord and 4 bodies dropped. A moment later the bodies stood back up and started reloading the gun. Moose rolled over and looked at the sky. "Holy shit!" The Tsar was screaming across the sky toward Cathu. "The Tsar is falling!" The 3 snipers shot again. The one next to him tilted its head. "We still got ammo for now. Do what we can." Moose nodded. A crater erupted a few feet away from him. "Anyone have any ideas?" In orbit around the world, Spitz Little spun her Omega into a roll, slicing across the hull of a Gallic ship. She skidded the mech across the back spine of the kilometer-long ship, stopping at the rear engines. She thrust the sword down into one, an eruption of fire, a molten metal flung into space. She fired the thrusters, pushing the suit back up the spine. Her massive light sword filleted the ship, and the engine fires followed. Then with another flick of the controls, she spun herself away as the cruiser detonated. She pivoted. A beam of blue light shot past her, clipping the left arm and wing. She began an uncontrolled spiral. Deftly, Spitzlittle operated the toggles, bypassing the damage and rerouting thrust to compensate. The Omega stabilized. She looked through the floating ruins. Only 2 other Omegas were still left fighting. She clicked her teeth in anger. "You will not take my family!" She fired thrusters toward the nearest broken Omega's beacon. "You will not take us!" Captain Killall was back at the helm of a ship. Killall and its crew had taken out 7 of the Gallic craft, but the Gonrundo had taken substantial damage. Killall stood looking at the on-screen display. Killall's second stepped up. "Captain, the ship is derelict. Do you want us to evacuate?" Killall looked at the younger Craddock. "The pods are death traps. They will snatch us up and use our corpses as their own skins. It is better we stay here, defend, fight the best we can, but together." The second huffed in agreement. "Understood." It got on the ship comms. "Everyone hold the ship. Prepare for boarders." Sam stood in the hall, holding onto Asterian's arm as the Tsar impacted. The squad was flung down the hall. Sam felt his arm snap from the force. "Fuck!" Asterian got up first and began helping his fellow troops to get up and assess them. The Infinigan tech crawled over to Sam. "Are you okay?" Sam shook his head. "No, my arm snapped." Sam looked at the 4-eyed creature. "I don't know your name." "Crunchcheek. You know my parents?" Sam nodded. "Yes." He chuckled, body going into shock. "I think your mom attacked me once." Crunchcheek bobbed his ears. "Yeah, she likes to tell that story while she tinkers." "Well, Crunchcheek, I really hurt right now." Sam said. "That's good, sir. Means you're alive." Sam nodded and used his one good arm to try and stand. Crunchcheek helped him up. Sam looked at the troops stirring. "Nova, you there?" "Yes, sir." The tall blue Infinigan hologram appeared next to him. "Nova, situation. Moose and Team 2 are pinned down. We are down to 3 Omegas. The Craddock ships are scuttled and being boarded." Sam looked down the hall. "And we are wrecked on an infested world near a dying city." "That is correct, sir." Sam took a breath, stifling the pain. "You still able to control your box spiders?" "Yes, sir. I have many left." Sam looked at Crunchcheek. "You any good at building things?" Crunchcheek bobbed his ears. "Well, what I like to make isn't that useful." Sam leaned on the smaller Infinigan as they moved slowly down the hall. "What do you like to make?" "I like racers, sir. I made small radio vehicles. I like to race them around Outer Ring." "Nova," Sam said loudly at the hologram. "Yes, sir." "Let Crunchcheek here access your CAD. Work with him and get us some suitable vehicles printed out and start building defenses. We need to establish a beachhead." Nova stepped forward and touched Crunchcheek's eye display. "Yes, sir. Program access granted. Box spiders have begun defensive preparations. Nova, get the 3 Omegas to dive on that mining facility. It has to go down or everything is lost," Sam said. "Message sent, sir." Spitzlittle had just scorched one of the fallen mechs when she got the message from the surface. En route, Nova. She entered the Omega channel. "Family, we're the last shot. We have to wreck that bore machine. The city dies if we don't." "Yes, ma'am." They answered back. Spitzlittle and the 2 other mechs dove through the atmosphere. They dragged their swords across legions of marching Gallic, setting them on fire. Their mechs let loose barrages of missiles, detonating living black structures. A rocket came up from a bunker in the ground, striking the Omega on her left. It tumbled across the ground. A dozen Gallic immediately closed in on it. Spitzlittle sent out a missile, coring the cockpit out of the fallen mech. She ground her teeth. The bore machine was visible 3 ridges over. The 2 mechs closed in. Spitzlittle readied her weapons, locking in on the structure. The cannons stopped firing at the ground and spun on her. The sky around her erupted in flashes and smoke. The other mech fell, and she spiraled. Spitzlittle's craft slid across the ground, its head hitting a large mass of fallen foliage and stopping. Moose witnessed the Omega drop. It was just on the ridge they had passed. "Angel fallen! Secure it! Don't let the pilot get consumed!" Moose crawled out of the line of sight of the Boer artillery. "I need 10 men with me. The rest of you give us cover fire and keep the freaking creepy crawlies from coming up that hill." Moose nodded at the volunteers, and they began their way over to save Spitz Little. Chairman Kakov sat at the high bench with 4 other congresspeople staring down at Patricia Jonsdottir. "Miss Jonsdottir, to the charge of high treason, how do you plead?" he asked into the microphone. She stared back coldly. "I am guilty." "You admit you knowingly leaked classified information?" "I knowingly leaked classified information to the peoples of the hue of whom we serve. Yes, I did that." He looked at the other members of the panel. "Well, open and shut. She admits to it." She stood up. "I have something to say." "Sit down, Patricia. You have already said enough." The congressman on Kakov's left held his hand. "Let her speak." Kakov stared fire at him. He then looked back at Patricia. "Go on." "The people know. The Heilung have raised the banners. The Posar is already en route. Do what you want to me. The worlds are changing already." The seats behind her erupted into chatter at the mention of the Posar. Chairman Kakov hit his gavel on the bench. "Silence. I don't know what games you're playing at, but everyone here knows the Posar was mothballed and is now in a museum. Do not invoke your people's boogeyman on us." He guffawed. "Such nonsense. The Oblivions are outlawed." Patricia laughed. "You do not need to worry, Chairman. It is already in the rift, and none of your concern." She sat down. "Do what you want to me. One of my brothers needed my help and I gave it. I know what I did was against the law." The room was murmuring again. Kakov hit the gavel 3 more times. "Quiet. I will hear no more of this. You know what you did was wrong. We will begin the sentencing." Patricia leaned into her mic. "I committed treason, but I do not admit to doing anything wrong." Admiral Frith stood overlooking the holographic representation of the rift channels. He pointed at a large cluster of bound rift lanes circling a massive hole. "What is that?" he asked his AI Archon. The shimmering green hologram man looked at the display. "That has been deemed the rift core by researchers. The mapping that the AI orbit took during the catastrophe of the Callistode has given us viable flight paths." Archon pointed at a now highlighted red dotted line. "The rift web that covers the known universe all flows to here." Archon highlighted the circling rift channels. "It is an endless loop circling this spot here. By hugging the outer lanes upon entering the loop, we can follow it around to the beacon Sam's friends have activated at the present war zone." Frith stared through his helmet visor at the plan. "We're getting close then." "Yes, sir. We are within minutes of exiting rift space." "Incredible. The data from the Callistode said they were in rift for hours." "Yes, sir. And in all likelihood that ship is still circling in these very lanes." Frith looked over the projection. "No telling what is floating in this thing." Archon looked at him. "Thankfully, we will be leaving momentarily." Frith, still staring at the vortex on display, spoke up. "Put me through on the Posar main channel." "You are active, sir." "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your Admiral speaking. We are about to exit rift space and enter an active war zone. Keep your suits on. Be at the ready. Weapons hot." He touched the display showing the Oblivion tube. "Pilots, good luck." Olivia Langhorne was strapped into her Oblivion, the high vibration, the first ship in line to eject out the launch tube. She had performed her flight checks 3 times. The old star was ready. She stared out at the mesmerizing rift lights on the other side of the launch bay protective field. One moment the lights were flaring and bright. The next everything out there went dark. Stars backlit numerous moving objects floating. Archon spoke through the Oblivion channel. "Pilots, you are free for launch." Olivia throttled up. Her ship was shaped like a sharp-ended 6-pointed star, with each point running in channels along the launch tube. As she sped up, sparks started etching behind the craft as it ran down the conductive strip. Then she was free of the Posar. High vibration, flying free. She circled the ship, scanning the system. Hundreds of ships throughout the system started scanning back. Devastation, flying free. The next Oblivion gained on her and took up position. Imagination, flying free. Exploration, flying free. Invocation, flying free. The 5 ships did another larger circle of the Posar. The large white carrier was over a mile long, with numerous beam weapon platforms. It was currently only powering the shields. Olivia spoke to her wing of pilots. "First wing spread, devastation take point. Invocation run second. The three of us will follow and clear. Second wing, begin launch. The Devastation pulled out front and started traveling toward the nearest Gallic ship. Posar, we have a go, Olivia asked. Frith responded. Weapons free, make our introductions. Devastation, you are clear to fire up QRF, Olivia said. Jacob of the Devastation replied. QRF activating in 3, 2, 1. She could hear the smile in his voice. The Devastation's QRF sparked to life across the hull of the ship. It began glowing as the field started rending quarks in half. Energy waves began flowing like waves off the 6 points. The waves curled, cascading and rippling the spatial fabric behind the craft. Frith watched on the video display. He spoke over the open comm channel. Bring the sun. The Gallic vessel didn't have time to turn. The Devastation was going too fast. It ran straight into the alien ship and came out the other side clean, with vast waves of fire and flame following it. The Gallic ship detonated, the ripples of energy dancing over and exploding. Termination flying free. Simulation flying free. Affirmation flying free. Destination flying free. Transmutation flying free. All ships flying free. Second wing clear, the last pilot said as she left the Posar. The Gallic ships closed in and started firing star lances. Olivia dodged a 100-meter wide burst of energy. Oblivions go hot. Enemy inbound. She flicked the cover protecting her QRF switch. She smiled and toggled her quark render field. It's been a long time, girl, she said to her ship. Light began rolling off her view screen. She could feel the warm shuddering as the field crackled to life. She spoke over her comm again. Devastation, continue for another 30 seconds, and then return to the Posar. 30 more seconds, and then charge up the Posar. Understood. Jacob copied. Olivia looked over her map display. 10 ships were in range. High vibration threading the needle. Novacore had made progress reshaping the Tsar into a stationary fortress. The walls had thickened near the ground, and he modified the shield to shroud the crashed ship. Several weapons platforms had been extended from the upper portions, and Sam was on one scouting for the gunner. Incoming 3 o'clock, Sam said, pointing. The Scribbler Knights manning the cannon pivoted it at the target and began firing energy blasts. Several large Gallic worms detonated. Direct hit, Sam said. A bright light in the sky distracted Sam. He looked up to see something he hadn't seen in 15 years. Streaks of light darting across the night sky like dancing fireflies, but leaving explosions in their wake. Holy fuck, they came. Sam's mouth dropped as he watched the light show in the sky. Deactivating QRF, preparing for entry, Jacob said as he neared the entry of the launch tube. Samantha, the docking supervisor, watched as he approached. Devastation, you are clear for docking. Discharge clamps ready. The Oblivion entered the protective field of the tube and slid into the 6 channels. The discharge clamps clacked into place on the points. Electricity flowed from the ship's store wells and capacitors, pumping into the Posar. Archon nodded at Frith in the helm. Frith spoke over the Posar comms. Docking successful. We are reading 30%. Next Oblivion expected in 2 minutes. All gunners, you are free to use the juice. Across the Posar, men and women sighted in targets and unleashed beams of fire and heat. Gallic ships had gotten close, losing fear of the Posar as it wasn't firing. The ship's crews had hungered and readied themselves to board. Those ships began melting and erupting as the beams cored them. The 2 wings continued their dance, threading fire and mayhem through the legions of Gallic ships. As one reached its capacitance, it docked to discharge, and within moments eject the other end of the tube to join its fellows. Olivia was in her element. Riding the energy waves was her thrill. She imagined it was like what the surfers of Earth felt as they caught the curl and let the power of the sea push them. She steered her ship, balancing on the pinpoint peak of chaos erupting around her. The wrecks she left behind her were secondary. This is what she had missed all these years. She laughed. Sam, you dipshit, you got me back in this thing.